Word. Okay. All right. So what we're going to talk about today, and I'll bring up a picture here in a minute, is how the 4 pillars, or why the journaling system, the learn your language, direction review, count your wins, and imagination theater, why is that so impactful as a repetition in our life in changing mindset? All right. And then what we're going to get into a lot in the very, very beginning and really spend most of our time on is how your actions, habits, and behaviors are formed, like literally formed in your head, and why they're formed. Why, as children, we don't perceive threats the way we do when we're older. Why the term executive function now for children is a big problem, and they say it's dysfunction when it's actually not dysfunction because of brain maturity, so to speak, and laying down what these neural tags and these neural chunks that we'll talk about today. So just to review from our last call, let me give you the kind of the overall view, and we'll get into it a little bit today, but your actions, habits, and behaviors are reinforced, and they're reinforced by things in your brain that we call neural tags. These neural tags are formed basically off of your influences in your life, right? Your behaviors, your an emotional state, your senses, what you've seen, what you've heard, what you felt. Like all those things, and we'll get into how many you have a day, they go into your brain, and your brain has 2 functions. It has a function for its number 1 thought is survival. Okay, that's how it thinks first. The second one, it's based off your expectations. So of all these things that we'll get into today, your brain chooses one based on those 2 criteria, and you start forming neural tags. And these neural tags, as you repeat them over and over and over again, get stronger, and that's your actions, your habits, and your behaviors, which is really fascinating to me, that we are the cause of how we think, right? And we blame other people. When we teach accountability, like accountability after this talk is so paramount to who you are as a person, and the accountability to what we talk about, to change that and to lay down the groundwork to move forward and become better and do the things you want. Like, you can't deny, when you have science to back it up, you can't deny it. And when you go into these neural tags and you learn how strong they are, that as you go back and you beat yourself up over them, you're just reinforcing the neural tags. So to the term let it go, but when we say let it go, we say work through it, do the 4 pillars. Like, there is a big reason behind that, right? The 4 pillars, when we ask you to do them, and we do them slowly when we coach, we ask you to do them because what you do basically, as you get better at them, you actually pull all those neural tags out. You start bringing them to the surface. Like we say, we bring your thoughts, your emotions, your actions to the surface. Well, you actually do, right? And when you start doing the 4 pillars, you start forming new neural tags, and you start pruning the bad ones. And we'll get into that a little bit today. It helps you, the 4 pillars helps you understand your own interpretation of a neural tag and the responses you have within these neural tags, which is your bound nature, right? So all the stuff we have taught, the stuff we will continue to teach, the stuff that why accountability is so big with a coach is because of neural tags. And to change neural tags, you have 2 ways you're going to change them, or 2 ways they're formed, right? You're going to have a massive emotional event or complete repetition over and over and over again. To change them or to make new ones, you have the same thing, right? Same thing. That's how we become self-aware, right? Go ahead, Margaret.
That's all I was going to add, was what works to create bound nature is the same thing that works to create free nature.
Right, and it's
the intensely positive experiences, or repeat the positive experiences, or the negative. It works either way.
And when you yourself says, this is the way I am, it's bullshit, okay? I have said that myself. No, this is how I am, this is how that's not true, okay? Let's say that's not true, and then we're gonna get into that a little bit to hear why, right? What we're doing in this talk, what we do every day when we come in here and teach is we are giving you a different option to be, right? We are teaching you how to change your mindset, and we're going to just dial it in, really literally dial it into your brain, because we're going to change the neurotag response, all right? Or we're going to change the sensory input, the storage mechanism, or what you want to call the prediction, whether it's dangerous or safe, right? We use the, we had some slides where we said it's about danger or safety. Like if I was going to the hospital, like when I go, I feel like I'm safe, right? Like I'm going to get help. Some people go and freak out because it's dangerous, right? That's a different neural tag response, right? So my perception of how I see certain things can be different. Like I have this, and people think it's weird, and I understand that. When I go to the dentist, I fall asleep because it's so soothing to me to have my teeth picked clean. I love it. Other people.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah, right? Clint. Oh,
And some people go to sleep because they're so overwhelmed. They just
it is out. Like I've been slapped awake at the dentist office. They're like, keep your mouth open. I'm like, ah. But we all have our own direct response to certain things. It can be anything. Like in stressful situations, like when boy on boy want to fight, like I get absolutely calm. Some people get super heightened. I don't know why. It's just how I've been. You know, so when you speak, your brain takes these inputs, right? Like stressful situations, to me, I get super calm and I deal with them. But when I have a relationship argument, like I lose my calmness. Like, but when it becomes physical, it's different for me. Your thoughts create your inputs in your life, okay? Learn your language, pillar number one. That's why we use it, right? You know, the places you go are general inputs into your brain. The people in your life are general inputs to your brain, your sensory, hear, all that type of stuff. So when we teach circle of influence, there's a reason why we teach that, right? So the inputs that come in, that's what we take out. Like that's what we give out once it comes in. And we're going to go through that again here a little bit. Okay, so where do I want to start with these notes? So let's do this. Let me bring up first, let me share my screen with this one slide today, just one. Let's see here. Okay. Okay, so here is what a neural tag looks like, folks, okay? Just to give you a little science behind it, the blue part in there, the axiom, is the neural tag, okay? That's what you form when you form an action, thought, or behavior, okay? That is what goes on in your brain, all right? And what the green stuff around it, what we're gonna talk about here in a second, is the myelin sheath, however you wanna pronounce it. And we'll get into how powerful that is, how they grow, or how they're used, and how we can prune that away and build new ones, all right? But we're gonna spend most of our time on this and kind of grow from there a little bit, all right? So this slide is the physiology of mindset right here, all right? Now, this is one shot of it, but in our brain, we have hundreds of millions, apparently, okay? And those with the greatest mass have the most power influence over our brain activity, right? So in essence, they create the greatest outputs of our actions, habits, and behaviors, okay? So this green myelin here that goes over the axiom that you see as you repeat actions, habits, and behaviors, that myelin gets bigger, okay? And then as they grow, these neurons that fire together, they wire stronger together, they become connected together. So as we repeat, let's use bad actions, habits, and behaviors, the myelin's laid down around the neuron, the axiom, right? And its antenna to insulate and protect the neuron, or the neuron's activation potential, that's the axiom, right? And it's like an antenna. What goes around the axiom is that myelin laminate. And think of it as if you have a pen, and inside the pen is the ink cartridge, that's the neuron or the axiom, and the pen case is the myelin, right? So if you had a big thick pen, that myelin, the ink cartridge would be protected better, right? Or what I like to use is when you go sledding, okay? When you start sledding, the first time after a big snow, you go down, and you literally have to push yourself down the hill and start making tracks in the snow, right? It's tiring, doesn't work well, you don't sled well at all, you get really frustrated, you get to the bottom, you walk back all the way up the hill. You go on those same tracks again, you get down, you slide, you're still working it, you're still working it. And you do that 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 times, and you start grooving that sled right down in those tracks. So the more you groove it, the more it packs down, the faster it goes, all right? The myelin, the more you repeat actions, habits, and behaviors, the more you groove that snow in the sled. So the more you do it, the faster it goes. The faster the action output is, right? So but not also that, but you stay in the tracks, right? You don't fly off. So that myelin keeps that signal going where it needs to go the whole time. And at first, like I said, you go slow. Then you walk up, you repeat over and over again. We do the same thing, right? We have those habits, actions, and behaviors in our life, right? We have ways we self-sabotage us back to get back to that. You know, it's a little awkward at first when we try something new, right? It's uncomfortable, it's work, but the more you do it, the better it gets, the faster it happens, the less you have to think about it. And matter of fact, the more you do it, you never think about it. It just happens. And then you don't even realize you do it. And that's the beauty of this little neuron right here. That's how we grow and how we have certain things we do in our life that after a while we don't even understand that we do them until someone points them out. And that's the first level of how we learn, right? We don't know what we don't know until someone tells us we don't know. So this myelin, this green sheath around this axiom, that allows things to happen in your brain, right? It insulates the neural tag to allow it to move more quickly, but more powerfully. It allows the axiom or the neural tag to activate faster, so it moves easier. And because it moves easier, it has a high level of efficiency connecting themselves down, right? And here's the thing, the faster it moves, the more efficiency it moves, it has more power of influence over you, right? It has, the influence has more power on the output you create or the response you have. So someone who gets in a fight and they get angry and outburst and get physical, like that's the output that's created. Someone that gets tormented or they get in a fight and they retreat real quick and they shut down fast, that's the power that's created it for them. Because here's the thing, the thicker the myelin gets, the less energy it needs to be activated. And that is, I mean, you I'm sure in your life you sat with someone, boy, they just flew off the handle in an instant, right? Didn't take much energy to get them to create something. So that neural tag activates and starts forming other non-myelinated tags and forms, you know, the one picture we used was all the neural tags connected in your brain and come out. They just help lay more tracks down for more new tags to be generated, right? So to review, the ones that are practiced the most, they're the easiest to activate. So the ones you've been practicing and falling into bound nature response, the easier it will be for you to fall into a bound nature response, the easier it is for you to have the certain negative language around certain activities, the way you may have a certain response to something that you do not like. And if you keep talking about something you don't like, you will inevitably have an expectation you don't like it. That expectation will activate the neural tag and you won't like it, right? As opposed to forming a new language around it. So that's why when we teach or learn your language and people start getting to it and they start talking negatively all the time, we tell them to flip that language and talk completely differently about it immediately. So they don't keep reinforcing the language, language is actually a response to trauma, and trauma, remember, has different, when we think of trauma, we think something really bad, but trauma is just a response that forms the tag in our brain, right? To give you an example, someone who has experienced a lot of physical pain in their life, the more they will experience physical pain, okay? I'm gonna let Margaret talk about this in just a second. The more you talk about having a disease, and the more you talk about being sick, tired, all those things, and you reinforce it all day long, you talk about it all day long, then you go to chat rooms and talk about it all day long, and you talk about it to someone else and you write about it, you're gonna feel that. Margaret, you wanna just expand on that a little bit, just from your own?
Oh yeah, sure. No, that was how I got myself, y'all have heard this story before, but I was dealing with Lyme, and about 2 or 3 years into treatment, still kind of stagnant. That's when I realized what we're talking about today, that's what I needed to start focusing on. That needed to be my primary, honestly, I use the word treatment. So all the time and energy I spent doing all the protocols and popping all the pills and getting the IVs, doing everything else, I ended up shifting to spend that time focusing on, I didn't have this language at the time, but I was rewriting my neural tags. I had a mindset of being sick. I mean, it's easy to come by. I mean, if you're not feeling well, remember Chris talked about it, these things get reinforced. These tags can get imprinted either through intensity or through repetition. And so in my case, it was just day in and day out, day in and day out, day in and day out, feeling badly, and then it just has this talk about that myelin sheath getting thicker and thicker and thicker. And then the next thing you know, it becomes that well-worn pathway. And the next thing I knew is I just believed I was sick and that I wasn't going to get better. So I just decided I was going to go in a different direction. And it wasn't easy. I mean, it didn't, those first days and weeks are the hardest. And then it got easier. And then now 5 years later, oh my gosh, it's so easy. Like, but it took, Chris talked about the sled, that well-worn path in the snow. It actually takes picking your sled up and moving to a new spot.
Good point.
That takes energy, that takes time, that takes intentionality. I mean, that just doesn't just happen by default. There's one exception to that. He said intensity. If I were to have a really positive, or not just me, but anyone, you can have a really positive experience that can override all of that. But absent that, it's simple and consistent, because that's how most of these got programmed in us in the first place. Just simply day in and day out. It's the culture you live in. It's the home you live in. It's the air you breathe. It's the TV that's on all the time. Whatever you are just hearing in the background, just be mindful. Be forewarned. We're telling you now. They are either creating and or reinforcing these neurotags, and they will become your actions, your habits, your behavior, your thoughts. And I don't know. Did you share this? At any given moment, you're going back and forth between, it's always a binary response. Am I feeling safe or am I feeling not safe? Danger or safety? Good or bad or good? And, the battleground, this tug of war that's constantly going on, the battleground is who's going to have control of that neurotech? Who's going to have control of your thoughts, your emotions, your behaviors? So it's just, at any given moment, it's a choice. It's a tug of war. So,
for so long, like I believed, I had this paralyzed theater talk on the phone, which I can't believe now, to be honest with you. But like that social anxiety, because I thought about it all the time, and we always had a phone in our hand all the time. I just created more anxiety than I even had. If I thought about it, I just strengthened the neural tag. If the phone rang, it actually was an auditory. So if you know me, I never have my phone volume on for that reason. But You want to hear what cured me? Journaling. But here's what of the journal. We have taught this, and we'll teach it again. It's called an inspiration statement. Okay, an inspiration statement is built as a few 3 to 5 words that are built, that are visceral to you, that lead you to your goal. Okay, my goal was to every day tell myself how great I was at talking, how great I was at selling, how smart I was. Okay, so I had an inspiration statement. So I set my alarm on my phone to go off every 90 minutes. Every time that alarm, and it was a different chime because it's auditory, right? It would go off every 90 minutes. Every 90 minutes it went off. I said my inspiration statement and I said those words to myself. I did that for weeks. Within a week, it was, as soon as I heard it, was automatic in my head. But you want to change a habit or behavior, it goes back to Pavlov's dog and the bell. It really changes those type of the neural tags in your head, because that neural tag that I was forming all the time, thinking I couldn't talk on the phone, I was a bad salesperson, I didn't know what I was saying, people didn't want to hear what I had said. When I heard that and I said that, the repetition, the 4 pillars, the repetition of the bell, the repetition of saying that, I strengthened the new neural tag, and it happened. Like that's, now I understand why. I did it before I knew this, but now I understand why, that happened. If someone grew up in a household with a narcissistic family member their whole life, and all they know is narcissistic family member, then they grow up and marry a narcissistic family member. You talk about laying down tracks for a life that you don't want a part of, that makes you feel bad, and then you get out of it. The work you're going to have to do, and you can do it, to lay down neural tags so you don't have an as-is personality because you think this is how you are. You can do it. You just need to present yourself with a positive outcome and think about those things all day long, constantly, and not perseverate on the past. Like the perseveration of the past for a lot of people, of what's happened to them, and the negative things, because remember, the first thought in your brain is the survival. So when we think of negative things, we think of, well, I don't want to go back to that again. It hurt, right? It's always hurt, whether it's mental, physical, behavioral, it's always hurt. So when Margaret and I constantly say or teach you, you know the behaviors you have and how you act, because they're so grooved into the neurology, right? You're going down that mountain in that sled groove. But here's the thing. If some bully gets in that sled groove, like Margaret said, instead of fighting the bully, I just go make a new groove. So I don't have to fight the bully. So I'm avoiding the conflict of pain of the fight and getting into a new groove and going down it, and I'm fine, long as I do the work, So, here, one more little analogy, and this is big in health. And Henry, you have some thoughts to this, please chime in. In strength training, or in PT, especially if you've gone to PT, you spend an inordinate amount of time reteaching patterns, okay? Because pain in joints quickly makes you regroove the neural tag from pain, right? So your neural tag teaches your body to change its pattern without you even knowing, to go away from the pain. So here, this is true. If you hurt, okay, and you don't go to the doctors or PT, over time, the pain goes away. Do you know why it goes away? Because the neural tag forces your postural motion to change away from what's hurting, and you form a new neural tag of movement. That's why when you go to a gym with a personal trainer who knows what they're doing, they will regroove your squat over and over and over again until it looks right. And do the things, because if you put weight to an unnatural motion, you will strengthen the poor postural motion, right? So pain is a big one, whether it's physical or mental, right? It's fight or flight. Here's the thing. The things we practice are the things we become, okay? How about a professional athlete learning how to play golf? Look at Tiger Woods from the time he was 4 years old, over and over and over again. So in physiology, and this applies to our mental health as well, it's called the SAID principle, right? So SAID it's quantified as specific adaptation to impose demands on ourselves, okay? To put it simply, you get better at what you do.
Mm-hmm.
All right? Or better yet, it's the basic adaptations to adapt at the things you have to do. Okay? I mean, the have to do is important, right? So back to the squat pattern. I've broken my left ankle, oh my gosh, multiple times, 3rd-degree sprains on my right multiple times. So I have bad grooving squatting patterns. So I've had to constantly work at that. And I have other issues, but part of my physicality is not just aesthetic, it is pain management, right? So I stay healthy. I have, Henry, you may not, I have 9 herniated discs in my back. I have massive scoliosis. I have impact syndrome from football in each spinal process, and my S5 is fused to my sacrum on the right side. So I have like massive trauma to my spine. I have no back pain. The only time I have back pain is when I've done something new that's overloaded in a bad pattern and I overuse the musculature, all right? So you can get away from those type of things as long as you work on it. You repeat the SAID principle, so you adapt to the new things you need to do. The same thing your brain does, right? Because you always know exactly what you need to do. The question is, when it becomes to our mental health, the uncomfortableness of forming something new and doing it gets tiring, right? Mm-hmm. Just think of someone who's trying to lose weight. After 14 days, they get tired. So what happens is they have negative thinking. They don't have the tools to move them through the repetition of the positivity to help form those neural tags and prune the bad ones. So when we actually say they don't see themselves as they see themselves as a fat person, not a healthy person, like there's truth to that, right? There's so much truth to that. So a behavior, a spoken word, activity, that can help form the neural tags, right? Or it's the bad neural tag. So every time we use a neural tag, more myelin is laid down. The choice is, you have the choice. Are you going to lay it down on the old and make the old stronger, right? Are you going to regroove that old sled? Or are you going to start going away from the bully that just stole your sled tracks, and you're going to start making a new one for yourself, right? Mm-hmm. So we want to strengthen the neural tags so the outputs that are created are the ones we want, not the ones that someone gave us from our influences, right? From our society, from our environment, from our culture, from our home, right? So why is this so important to understand this with the 4 pillars? Because it's practice, right? I said there's 2 ways that the neural tags are reinforced, the new pathways. Emotional event, a good one, right? Or repetition. How are they formed? Massive emotional trauma, event, repetition, right? So you're practicing with the 4 pillars, you're practicing at perceiving a positive output every day, counting your wins, right? The day was beautiful. You just don't, here's the thing, you just don't say it. You gotta understand it, right? And that's the hardest part of the wins, right? I mean, everyone who does this, and Margaret and Henry and Clint, if you have experience with this, when people start with this, okay, they think you're full of shit, okay? Why? They think you're full of shit because they don't have the new tags to believe it. And the reason why they don't believe it is because they form so many negative neural tags, they can't believe that there's actually positive things. Because they can't feel them. They can't be one with them, but they can be one with the bad. That's when we have a great day and we get that one email. Why the one email is so much stronger than all the good? Because the neural tag has been laid down so many times, right? So when we tell someone to count their wins or what's your positive language say, you're lost. The reason why you're lost is because you're stupid. It's because you've never laid down enough tracks in the snow to let your sled go down the hill perfectly. You have to repeat it. If you ask that same person who diligently did it 6 to 9 months, you ask them to count their wins, they'll sit there for an hour if you don't shut them up. I could do 30 right now just from my morning here, okay? When you're able to do it and feel it and see it, those tracks come down. Like I can, in certain instances, even as someone who can practice this well, like I still have very ingrained neural tags that are still there that can drop me quick. If it's a certain environment, a certain sensory, right? Feel, taste, like I talked about the whiskey, right? And the Tabasco sauce. So, you know, people who learn to count their wins at the beginning of the day, you know, they're going to say, I don't see any, I don't have any, because they're looking for that one thing that's going to change their life forever. And we've talked about it. It's the simple and consistent daily work that gets you to the aha moment in life. Why is that important? Because the simple and consistent daily work lays down the green myelin that you're looking at, you've been staring at for 45 minutes. That green myelin is what you're building, right? Those are the neural tags. Those are the positive emotions. That's the positive mindset. That's mindset growth, right? You know,
I just want to go back to a couple of things that you said, just to flesh it out a little bit. Earlier you said, you know, hear yourself talk it out, like journaling. You talked about the 4 pillars, where there's a 5th pillar, and that's talking it out. You know, part of this is, you know, you talked about when you set your alarm and you set it to yourself. Don't just say it in here, although do say it in here, do journal it, whatever you need to do, but also say it out loud, because even saying it out loud becomes part of that new experience that you're having.
yes,
The words that you're saying come back to you. And there's something about our brains, we believe our own voice more than we believe anyone else's voice. So there's something about it's awesome if you're in an environment where you have a loving, supporting, nurturing, encouraging group of people, or even if you have a coach that's cheering you on. But there's something different about when you say it to yourself. So as you journal or as you think about it, say it out loud. Again, don't there's, you know, you don't want to, if you're not, what am I trying to say? Well, you just said it. You don't want to make this stuff up, but you do have to start somewhere. So I know that sounds like I'm saying contradictory statements, but I'm not. Like with intention, with purpose, go through this process and say, I'm going to lay down a new pathway. I'm going to get a new pathway started. Even just saying that kind of anchors that in your psyche, whatever words you want to use. You know, today is the day I'm going to get this going. That's why those inspiration statements are so strong. It's you talking to you. You know, you're the one that created these neuro tags. You're the one that gets to uncreate them. But I was actually going to say one other thought that's going to contradict what I just said. Some of us are born into families where it may just be the family culture. I like to say that we come pre-programmed. So some of us may become pre-programmed with some of these neuro tags. You know, I mean, it doesn't matter. The process is still the same. Just because everyone going back as far as you can remember, all, you know, 10 generations back, or maybe you remember your parents or grandparents or great-grandparents, you still can change it. You can say, hey, the buck stops here. I'm going to create something new for my family line. And I can promise you it works, because I've done it to myself and I've helped other people do it. So just because you're a certain way, your mom was a certain way, your grandmother was a certain way, you can deprogram those neuro tags too. So don't think it's a, you know, you kind of alluded to this earlier, Chris. It's not, don't be a fatalist. You can still change it, even if it's all you've ever known. So.
Yeah, everyone understands that when we coach, and this is an important statement, we never, ever tell someone what we think. We always lead the questions. Margaret can attest. You are telling yourself that through your language, okay? That's why we do learn your language, so you can find out and understand and learn those things yourself. I'm merely here as a guide, as an observation, because when you tell yourself those things, you believe it. That's why parents telling their kids things doesn't matter, because you believe it when you believe it, not when someone else tells you. And that's important. That is super important. That's why we say the 85,000 thoughts you have in your head that are negative a day in your subconscious, you believe because you're saying them to yourself. Like, it's so true. Now, let me just get into like okay, this isn't hard science. This is the stuff they're trying to prove now, but they think is true, right? So their best guess, so sensory information, so sight, taste, ear, smell, touch, every second of the day, if we could take all the data that we process and add them all up, they believe there's about over 200 billion pieces of data swirling around your head every single day per second, okay? So now you have to look at what your subconscious is trying to process as you're getting all that data. So your brain is trying to go through what they think is about 2,000 neural tag processes per second. So of the 200 billion, your subconscious takes in probably around 2,000, and you process 1 out of 1 million of those 200 billion. Okay, here's the question. Somewhere there has to be that filter, right? So how do we get 1 out of all them, right? And your brain, remember, your brain has to ask yourself these questions every single second of the day. So the answer is, how does it filter? Okay, talked about this. Number 1, survival is top of its list. That's why as kids learn to fight when they've been pushed into a corner. Okay, number 2, expectations. You set the expectation. All right, what have Margaret and I said ad nauseum? Well, expectations, when you have set expectations for yourself, you are setting yourself up for failure. Right? You cannot have expectations. Expectations in relationships, job, yourself. Because here's the thing, you don't know when they're going to happen. You don't know, you can't tell the future. That's an expectation. You know what I mean? You can't tell what's going to happen. Like, it just doesn't work that way. You know, have you heard the statement, your expectation creates your reality? True, right? Okay, so let's just do an example. All right, I'm going to use myself. I hate going to parties on Friday night, like loathe it. With the way I recover from my outward extroverted life, like it is like a swirling pool of dung heap for me because I'm done on Fridays. But with that language that I just gave you, and I'm saying that to myself, I go to the party, it's going to be a swirling dung heap pile of dung for sure, right? Because my expectation is it's going to be, right? As opposed to, the rule was, if my friends wanted to go to a party Friday night or something, they knew to tell me days ahead. Why? Because I would start in my head saying, well, I'm going to go out and have some fun. Like, I knew I had to tell myself that, because if I was the other way around, it wouldn't be good, right? I wouldn't meet people. It wouldn't be fun to go out. And then I started throwing all the parties. And don't tell me how that happened. I don't know, but that's just what happened. Maybe that's where my whiskey and Tabasco sauce thing started. I don't know, right? But here's the thing. Your brain seeks evidence to support your expectation, right? That's what it does. So because if your prediction is on a neurochemical level, which we just talked about in your neural tags, and you make it true, here's what happens. Your brain hits you with dopamine for being, oh, you're smart, you're true. Then you feel good, right? Oh, I was right. That was a pile of dung heap party. See, I told you every time. Every time we go, it's like that, right? Your brain feels good. You're reinforcing, you're making that green little wrap around your neural tag bigger. You're supporting it. You're making it feel, you're making it flex its muscles, right? If you say it sucks, it's gonna suck, right? Your brain wants to say, I'm right. It wants to feel really good because you supported your expectations, right? So if we go back and support what the brain attaches to those 1 in 1,000 million sensory things, it attaches to survival and then expectation, right? It attaches to what your expectations and predictions happen, right? So if I tell your brain to count your wins, to cognitively think about counting your wins through repetition, I'm training you to collect data, like literally collecting data. I'm putting little workers around that axiom, and we're just hammering away every day, building a nice little brick wall around that new neural tag to ignore the negative data next to it, right? We're building up that wall, building your own new groove in the track from that guy that just stole your track in the snow, right? More myelin equals more mass, equals stronger signal, equals faster signal, equals positive grooves, right? You think what you become. If you think positively and you start working on that, you're going to take away those. And if I had to think about it right now, as I'm thinking, as my little workers are building my little brick wall around my axiom, you know where they're getting those bricks? They're going next door and stealing from that dude next to me, the negative one. They're taking his bricks and putting on yours, because that's exactly what happens. They're reinforcing the good by stealing from the bad, right? So we complete the same story. The new narrative in our head, right? What we think, the story we perceive is the story we become, which drives my physiology. Where's the physiology come from? The neurology of my brain that's firing, right? So until you know, you don't know. And now you know, right? We have to understand how we think and how we do things in life, how our actions, habits, and behaviors are formed, which, remember, if we start, the perception we hold, the story in our head, becomes our belief system. If that belief system is negative, then my actions, habits, and behaviors follow that, because the neural tags in my head that are formed based on my influences, society, environmental, behavioral, blah, 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 expectations, I'm firing and building new neurons through my brain, okay? But if my perception of myself, and I work on thinking of myself as a positive human being, I am good, here's what I'm great at, look how far I've come, look at all the beautiful things in a day, look at my inspiration statement, look what I've done, I'm not beating myself up, I have compassion and gratitude for myself and for others, new neural tags are formed, I'm stealing the bricks from my brother who is negative, those paths get bigger, they fire more, that's how it happens, right? The perception of my world becomes different. People may say, I don't know you, but you know you, and that's what matters. Yeah. Go ahead, Margaret, sorry.
No, I'm just trying to just add a little bit to what we talked about earlier. And that was, and this brings us back to the beginning, which is, that's why you can't define trauma as an event. Trauma is going to be unique to the individual for this very reason. You know, two people can go through the exact same experience at the exact same time and have very different responses. Mm-hmm. And it's going to depend on what has been wired in their brain. You know, mm-hmm. Are they predisposed to think this is scary or not? Is it, you know, is their inner world safe or is it not? And how that gets wired beforehand will determine, you know, how they get out of it. Are they able to process that experience? So that's why you can't say, oh my gosh, that was a traumatic event. Well, it depends. To who? Maybe it was for some people, but maybe it wasn't for others. But this is some of the science behind that. And why, and I loved this example to a little kid. I mean, this is why, if you're a parent, please, in fact, Chris and I talked about it. We're going to teach you on how to teach this to your children and how to be a good parent to your children through this. But to a child, having his crust cut off of his peanut butter and jelly sandwich can actually be traumatizing. I mean, we think, oh, that's ridiculous. How many parents have just been so dismissive of their child because it's not traumatizing as an adult, but absolutely it can be to a child. So we'll that'll be another talk for another day, but traumas are personalized, and this is the science behind why.
And so we have a few minutes. I want to talk about, we could do a whole nother talk. Like, I have a whole bunch more to do, but I want to do this one thing. So how do you build more myelin than just by thinking it, okay? Around the axiom or the neural tag that reinforces you, okay? So I want you to think of this, and most of you will know this. You have to work out to build muscle, okay? You have to eat healthy, sleep, water, everything, right? So when we work with people and we ask them, how are they taking care of themselves physically? There is an important component to that, to the wiring of your brain and forming those neural tags. Forming neural tags has a lot to do with how physically active you are and healthy you are. It's just like dosing exercise, okay? Henry knows this stuff, right? When we dose exercise, we have to have the right neural systems involved, the right recovery, We have to have the right sides of the brain working. We have to drill it continuously. When you work with a teenage boy who's learning strength training and his weights go up quickly, it's not because he got stronger. It's because his neural activation system learned, okay? The quality of the reps in strength training have to be good. Like I said, you don't want to load a squat pattern and have a faulty squat pattern because you're strengthening the faulty squat pattern, right? So if I'm dosing my mentality of my head, it can't be faulty. It has to be quality, right? So when we tell you to give us 5 wins, it's not because I want you to take a break, because we want it to be quality. And if you could do 30, but they're quality, that's even better. But if I ask someone new to give me 20 wins, they're going to look at me like I have 5 eyes, right? And now what happens? They say, I don't have 20. Now they're forming a negative neural adaptation to wins. That's the worst, okay? Just so Margaret and I will attest to that, okay? As you get stronger, to build more muscle, you increase the intensity of the load, which could be the weight and the reps and or sets, how many we do, okay? Same, when we coach people, there are literally weeks we're going to be like, you are off. We're not talking for a whole week, no journaling. Why? Because you get tired.
Right.
Like you get mentally, there's a difference between mentally tired and physically tired. Physically tired and mentally tired. My brain might want to exercise, but my body says yes. My body says no, but my brain says yes. But the stronger you get, you will notice that your brain can get your body doing more than you ever thought because you believe in it, okay? The schedule you do, when do you do it? What's best for you? Like I could give you science behind the best times to work out, but what's best for you? Like we said, make journaling an experience for you. If it's a burr in your ass, it's gonna be a negative language to that neural tag, right? Okay, here's important, okay? This is not a detriment to how you eat or any of that stuff, but metabolic fuel when you're strength trained is huge. Eating candy bars and cereal and stuff is crap. Okay, but here's what I wanted to say. Do any of you know what your brain runs on? Like metabolically?
Mm-hmm.
Carbohydrates, okay? Doesn't work on keto, okay? Cholesterol are like little firemen in your body, right? They put out the fires. So you need some cholesterol, okay? Like there's a reason why we get brain fog, and why brain fog, we always go directly to your stomach because your stomach's your second brain, right? Because of all the pathways in there. So there is so much to do with health and having positive neural tags. That's why you will see now there's a huge following that we're having of exercise professionals starting to learn this stuff with us because it meshes together so incredibly well for yourself. By the way, for kids with ADHD, executive function disorder, one of the treatments is cardiovascular exercise because of what the serotonin stuff it releases in your brain. You become more active and more creative and you can think better. So if you're working all day, like going for a walk outside, like moving energy and being energy, there's a reason for that, right? There's a reason why we want to work on concentration and focus. Like there's so many parts of this that follow everything we do in a day that is just not changing my mindset. Like this is about you, about all the good parts of you.
And then I'll just add breathing. You know, you need oxygen,
Yep.
Oxygen to your brain. So I know for me, I just, way back when I realized I didn't breathe very well. I was holding my breath a lot, actually, which is what you do when you're kind of stuck in a scary place, stuck in fight or flight. Your breath you're not breathing the way you should. That's part of why breathing is helpful, or even that exercise. It oxygenates your whole body, including your brain. Mm-hmm. So that's a big piece of it.
Yeah, and as you get better at it, and you get better at doing the journaling, the language, understanding your bound nature, when you have a bound nature moment and that new neural tag is fired, and it goes down the level, and they're connected. Remember, as they get stronger, they connect to different ones. We've taught you about bound nature traits and how when you notice one bound nature trait happen, after a while and you get good at it, you can see where it leads down the line. Well, the beauty of understanding neural tags is when you interrupt the signal, when we talk about interrupting the bound nature moment and recognizing that person, that emotion or emotional state or thought that comes out, and why we name them is because you stop it and you redirect it. And when you redirect it, you start forming positive neural adaptations because we've taught you how to handle the bound nature of the non-serving emotional thoughts, actions, and habits, right? So like when we teach flow switch or kill switch and those type of things, it's about the neurology of your brain as we've done that. That's why we want to get this talk in pretty quick and why we will reference it a lot when we talk about this now. Mm-hmm. Any questions?
Is this what you're talking about? Is this what's referred to as neuroplasticity?
It would be something? Yes. Yeah. There's a lot. So there's was it neurolinguistic psychology is like Tony Robbins made that famous.
Is that the same as neurolinguistic programming?
Yes,
NLP,
same thing. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. 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 So like Tony will like if you watch videos of Tony Robbins, he'll like change someone in an instant. The reason is because what you do is you watch someone when they tell a story, they'll look a certain way, or they look down and they'll be stuttering when they do it. And what he does is like he'll just touch their shoulder. It's not like he's like God. What he did was he added a sensory input change, and it changed the emotion that they're feeling in their head, and they can't relive the trauma that's causing stuttering, for instance. And it stops it because now they've learned because it's Tony first, okay, Tony Robbins. Then he's introducing a stimulus of Tony and their motion and a sensory input. It's a traumatic positive event, right? That's what happens. I just said that out loud, and that's what made sense to me. So I'm pretty sure that's what happens.
That's gotta be what happens.
But it's true. Like if I just think about it, if Tony Robbins, 6'6", is standing in front of you, you know who he is in the world. You're like nervous as it is, and then he has you relive your traumatic experience, and then he puts a giant hand on your head, and he tells you it's going to be okay, and it sparks you out. Like that's a powerful emotional event for anyone. And
really, because there's sort of two approaches. There's the create a new pathway, and then over time, create a new track in your snow, and over time this one fills up, and then you have a new track. What that approach is, it's a little bit different. That is basically you are rewriting that existing track. You're reprogramming the existing track to feel safe. Mm-hmm. It was programmed to feel unsafe, so you get triggered every time it gets triggered, just whatever. But if you program that same experience to now be a safe experience, then you actually don't have to rewrite it. Does that make sense? So there's really two approaches. You can either just get rid. We know the 4 pillars, the learn your language, all that stuff. That will work every single time, because that's you are rewiring. That other approach, and trust me, I've had both experiences. It just can be elusive sometimes. That's the issue. I mean, it's awesome when it works, but it's elusive. So, you run the risk of re-triggering. I'm not saying don't try it, but you can run the risk of re-triggering. But if you can create a safe space, and we talked about this on one of our calls it was the call that wasn't recorded. I think it was just the 3 of us. Chris, I don't think you were here. We talked about how the PTSD victims, survivors, I'm not sure what you call them, were exposed to ecstasy and reliving the experience, but now with a super hyped up positive emotional response coursing through their body. It absolutely rewrote the experience for them. It no longer felt safe. So they could re-engage the memory and the experience, but now from a safe place, a positive emotional response place. And it absolutely, it neutralized the neurotag, just like that. So anyway, it's kind of 2 approaches. But Henry, you knew the name of the study, didn't you?
Yeah, it's MAPS. So they're big research. They're called MAPS.
Okay.
MAPS?
Yeah, MAPS. And it's funny, this is how I heard it too. Tell the story doing jumping jacks and see how silly it is.
Yep. Yeah, because you can't relive that.
You can't relive
into the position, yeah. Mhm.
Right.
Does MAP stand for something?
1 second.
What's this about jumping jacks?
So try to tell the story doing jumping jacks.
If there's a traumatic story or story that kind of gets you worked up, try telling it with jumping jacks.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because again, what you're trying to do, what ends up happening, and well, that's for another time. We have experiences in life, and at any given moment, safe, not safe, safe, not safe, good, not good, good, not good, bad, not good, whatever. It's always a binary decision at any given time. And we're constantly assessing because it's survival. Survival's on the line. And, so is that memory getting imprinted with not safe, with the information of not safe? And if it is, and it gets either imprinted all at once if something majorly traumatic like whiskey and Tabasco, that would probably do it for me too, but or repetition.
Mhm.
And that's why so many of these traumas get imprinted, or neurotags get imprinted traumatically in childhood, is because with a child, they're even a well-meaning parent, they know at some level that their parents or their caregivers are responsible for their survival. And so if the parent isn't safe, or if the parent's creating that environment for them, that's why so many of the issues we deal with get imprinted in childhood. It just is what it is. First of all, we're very impressionable. We don't have the maturity. We don't know what's truly scary or not. And then there's that day in and day out repetition. So that's why I'm now thinking we really do need to do something for parents.
Mhm.
Help them to because I've said this before, I used to work in a K-8 school. In fact, that's part of what motivated me to get into this work was seeing the kids. And I'm like, golly, I would much rather raise healthy, resilient kids than to pick up the pieces once they're an adult. I mean, the beauty is you can pick up the pieces, you can put them back together again. But how much easier it would be, how much better it would be if we could stop this from happening in the first place. So, whoop, Clint, we lost you. You're muted.
I was going to say prevent Humpty Dumpty from falling off the wall.
There we go.
Yeah, totally.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Listen, this was a great talk. Teaching for me, you guys, it helps imprint it for myself. The stuff that I teach for myself, for my own health. And I appreciate you guys listening and talking and coming on. And we have stuff that we're going to bring for you guys, more accountability and more stuff to imprint it for yourself and have you actually do the work. So thank you.
And real fast, before you stop the recording, I just want to read what Henry wrote in the chat. The website is maps.org, maps.org.
Awesome. Thanks, Henry.
Research. So awesome.
All right, peeps. Thank you. See you Wednesday.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Later.
Thanks very much.
Bye, everybody.
See you
Love you
Wednesday.
guys. Take care.
Bye-bye.